Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this awesome webinar. Shout out to the Pre-Sales Collective and, of course, the team at Reprise that I am part of. So I'm super excited about that. We're going to be focused today on product demo, best and worst practices. And so we've all been there. We're going to give folks a little time to just log in. So for the audience members out there, if you don't mind, go ahead and click on the Q&A button right here below, submit your questions, and we'll go ahead and get to those at the appropriate time here during the session. How's everyone doing today? Doing pretty good. I know we have folks from all over the place, so that's great. And oh yeah, and for the audience members, go ahead and comment. Let us know where you're tuning in from. It's always nice to see where folks are tuning in from these days. And of course, we're going to go ahead and show the slide. I love this slide. Also, shout out to Will Smith, who's our designer. I just really love the way that Will designs our slides. We have Austin, Texas, Fort Lauderdale, all right, Raleigh, North Carolina, Denver, Chicago, London, and we have almost 400 people who signed up to this webinar. So it's pretty awesome. And then we always get folks coming in, sort of at the end here. India, right on, right on. And again, folks, I see there's a couple questions being submitted here in the Q&A. So that's absolutely awesome. Don't forget to click on that Q&A. And oops, actually, these are locations. Okay, awesome. Well, we'll transfer those over here. We have Amsterdam, or Netherlands, I should say. Awesome, New York. Awesome, right on. It's interesting. I host a podcast called Demo Diaries, so we're constantly hearing, sort of the different stories, best practices, the things that go wrong in demos, because we've all been there. And we also see some of sort of the new ways of doing demos, right? So I'm really excited to dig in there and really be able to share what the greatest sort of practitioners out there, which we are joined by 4 of them here today, have to say about the topic. So thank you so much. All right, we'll give it another minute, and then we'll go ahead and kick it off. And by the way, Alex, if you can, go ahead and post the poll, and you folks, you'll see a poll pop up on your screen. Just take a quick second to fill that out while we wait to actually kick off the rest of the webinar. Thank you so much. I see we have a question that came in from London. Fantastic. I love the international folks. I remember when I was in college, I was dying to go and backpack around, and I went ahead and did it, and it was probably the best time, one of the best times of my life. So anytime I see like a European name in one of these or location on one of these webinars, I get super excited. All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and kick it off if everyone is ready to rock and roll. Hello, everyone. My name is George Soto, or Jorge, or Jorge. I get them both. I was named after George Harrison of the Beatles, and my parents did not actually name me George, so I blame it on them. But they did refer to me as George, so here I am. I'm excited, as I mentioned, to be joined by 4 amazing pre-sales panelists today, some of the best, brightest, and greatest in the space. Why don't we kick it off with Melissa? If you can just tell folks a little bit about your, career background and, how you got into solutions consulting in Moment.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Garuli. I'm based out of California. I'm actually most recently from Chicago. The last 12 years I've spent in Chicago. So hi to all my Chicago friends. My husband and I just moved to California. He's in the wine industry. So awesome. I am riding those coattails and enjoying the perks of being in the industry. But a little bit about me, I am actually an SC boomerang. So I started my career as an SC at Oracle. So hi to my fellow Oracle friends. And then I did a couple years there. I moved over to Sprinkler, where I was in the success side of the house for the last almost 3 years, and then now came back to the SC side at InMoment. So my tenure has been within customer experience for the last like 7+ years. Ex Oracle, hello. So I love being back on this side of the house. I'm really excited to kind of have my perspective to having the SC and success blend. So hopefully that gets peppered in through my experience, but delighted to be here. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. Stephanie, how are you? Thanks for being here.
Hi, good to see everyone. And thank you so much, George, for hosting this. I'm Stephanie Lee. I work as a solutions consultant at Gainsight, but got here from a kind of roundabout way. I started my career actually teaching special ed math and science out in Los Angeles, and got laid off because they didn't have the budget to keep special ed teachers. So I actually went and worked for a hardware company for a while doing environmental auditing, and then found my way into healthcare and health IT. And that's where I got my start solutions consulting. I spent time as a trainer and as a support rep, and then actually got brought into solutions consulting because I could do kind of all the things and was a subject matter expert. And I'm really happy in this space. I'm really happy that I found the pre-sales collective and really happy to be solutions consulting. So really excited for the panel today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Leon, how are you from Salesforce? Everyone's favorite CRM. Of course, it feels like it's the only CRM, to be honest with you, right?
I appreciate
Thanks so much.
that, George. I think we're at probably 19 to 20% of the market, oddly enough. So it's a very fun, very crowded space we're happy to be a part of. Good to meet everyone. My name is Leon. I'm Senior Manager of Solutions Engineering at Salesforce. I manage our small and growth business teams for Boston and New England and the Mid-Atlantic out of DC. I would say I have a non-traditional path to solutions engineering, but I don't think anyone has a traditional path. I have one person on my team who minored in sales engineering in college, and that's the first time I've ever seen someone get a degree in anything close to being an SE. My path took me to law first, and I spent a lot of time in intellectual property law as a paralegal and exec assistant straight out of college, and very quickly realized that our clients over in Cambridge and Somerville working at startups were having a lot more fun being just about as successful as the partners and managing partners at my firm. So to make a very long story very short, I did my best to get into tech via software engineering and ended up here. More than happy to get into the details later on with anyone who wants to dive in, but great to be here today, George.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Frank, why don't you take us home here? And by the way, I think you folks own IT Glue as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We had one of your colleagues on the podcast recently.
That's right. Supriya was one of my most recent hires. So thank you for having me on, and glad to be here. So Frank Tisolano, I'm the Senior Director of Global Pre-Sales and Technical Account Managers for Kaseya. We are about a 19-year-old, I'll say, startup. We have about 35,000 customers all around the world. Our 40 plus SEs support about 30 products. So a little bit about myself. Let's see. I am now, in about 3 more days, I will have finished my 32nd year of pre-sales. 32nd year. So I was going to ask the question, how many people have worked longer than that in pre-sales? Or maybe should I say, how many people were born after I started in pre-sales? I don't know which one would be more embarrassing. So I started out, I think, the traditional manner back then in the 80s. We most of us came out of development and just migrated to the products that we were supporting. So the sales guy for the product that I ultimately went to go work for, Software AG, introduced himself, said, hey, listen, the guy that was supporting you left. You seem like a pretty good guy. You want to come and do this pre-sales thing? And I was like, I have no idea what it is, but it sounds pretty exciting. So, yeah, that was my path 32 years ago on July 15th.
Well, congratulations, Frank, because you really laid the foundation for all of us. And I was about 8 years old when you started your career.
Okay.
So that's awesome. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and kick it off if we can go to the next slide here. So just to set the stage a little bit, we all know that demos are really a critical part of our sales motions, but it's not this one size fits all experience like before, right? So like knowing your product in and out by itself is really not gonna cut it. And what really I think what makes it worse is that nowadays the definition of, I shouldn't say worse, but more challenging, which is always fun. The definition of a product demo is really shifting, right? So you have, some folks who want to see a specific demo on the first call, and then have a different experience the second call. You might have one stakeholder who maybe doesn't want the whole kitchen sink, and really if you do give them, you will lose them. So having to create these experiences are really, really important. And I think that being able to be more flexible, we've all been trained a specific way to follow whatever sales framework that you've been trained around in the past. Those things are still, from what I hear in the market, still valuable, but it's more important to be agile today than ever before. So we're really going to dig into these things. And again, for the audience out there, I see a couple questions being submitted. Fantastic. As we go through this, don't forget to click on the Q&A, because that's going to be super valuable. And if we do not get to it during today's webinar, that's okay. We'll get to it in a blog post or in a conversation in Slack. Definitely sign up to the Pre-Sales Collective community. So why don't we go ahead and kick it off here with Stephanie, and we'll just kind of go around the horn here, just kind of speak to what do you do, what does your team do, and maybe you can dive in a little deeper around the particular functions of your team when you get involved in opportunities, those sorts of things. What does that look like?
Sure. Thanks, George.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, I work for Gainsight. Specifically, I support our Enterprise East team and our healthcare practice. So we have a healthcare vertical at Gainsight, just started last year, and we are very experimental, looking to expand Gainsight's reach in the customer success space, but specifically for healthcare companies and in the healthcare industry. So what I do at Gainsight and what my team does is we work very closely to understand any prospects that we have in our pipeline. What are they looking to solve for? What is it that is that compelling event that has brought them to Gainsight looking for a customer success or for a product analytics tool? And trying to align very closely to what their needs are and what their goals are. Yeah.
Now, Stephanie, are there any particularly, like in the Salesforce, I'm just assuming you use Salesforce, but in the CRM, maybe just say CRM, are there any stages or like fields or triggers that sort of indicate, okay, this is the time that we're going to come in and intervene in the deal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've actually done a lot in the last couple months to kind of rethink how we think about the demo and when we actually find it appropriate to bring a solutions consultant in for a demo. So we have what we call the buyer-aligned sales process, which we've reimagined very recently, and we've built a lot of tools around that. And a lot of that is around Salesforce, collecting data in Salesforce in the opportunity and having different stages at which it's appropriate to actually have that product demo. So having enough information on those pains, on the value points and everything.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot around this solutions qualified opportunity or even lead. So awesome. Leon, why don't you take us into kind of, what's your role and your team's focus over at Salesforce?
Yeah, no, great question. And I'll kind of skip over the stuff I assume is probably similar. I think what makes us pretty maybe unique, although maybe very similar to a lot of startups, which I hope is the case. Our SEs are very ingrained with our sales team. We have a one-to-one SE to sales team model. And so what we try to preach is definitely being a resource for your team beyond just the demos. So we'll certainly get involved after like a certain level of qualification, but depending on the circumstance, the AE involved, the type of deal, whether it's competitive, I think what I really pride my team on, and I think you could say about the teams across the country, of which there are a few members here today, is that we very much lean in and partner with sales such that we try to provide solutions and expertise that go sort of beyond the traditional disco and demo cycle, beginning with as early as helping qualify or helping to uncover different pipeline in sort of larger strategic consultative engagements, as well as helping with the final packaging. We have quite a few products here at Salesforce. So SEs are leaned on, I'd say, a little bit before and a little bit after the traditional cycle, which is something we try to lean into.
And how are you interfacing with the demo engineering team? I know that Salesforce is very well known for that. There are a couple organizations now starting to build that out, but you're really sort of the model.
Very timely question. I think a few people were on an enablement right before this meeting for what we call our Q branch after the James Bond gadget factory. And they do everything from sort of design help and expertise on decks and collateral and even videos. Our demo engineering team they're incredible to work with. They help us build out those customizations, anything that requires a level of customization, or just we need the bandwidth. Small and growth businesses move very quickly, so sometimes we'll need that extra support to help build out a demo, and they'll help out with that. I think the number one way they touch our org, though, is through our demo org that we have. We have an instance or many instances that you can request that allow you to basically have all of our products in one place, and certainly requires quite a bit of configuration to get up and running. I hope none of my salespeople are on this call. It requires a lot of work to get a demo off the ground. It cannot be turned around in 24 hours. But yeah, that's probably the number one way, because that requires a lot of maintenance. You can imagine with that much product in one instance. They do a tremendous amount of great work, giving us the tools to succeed even when they're not directly engaged.
Awesome. I have so many questions just because I signed up for the lowest tier for my cousin's law firm, I don't know, 2 months ago. And then we ended up upgrading to pro, and then we needed to do some switching. So it was so interesting because it was so high touch, and I was like, we're not paying that much. How could you do this? So it's really cool to see that Salesforce is still supporting, all tiers. So awesome. Frank, why don't you, give us a little background around your world?
Sure. So I think we have a fairly unique model. First of all of our 99% of our leads are inbound. Our sales cycles are incredibly short. So my organization focuses on SMB and managed service providers. Sales cycles are measured in days and maybe weeks. So the process is very simple. The rep does a discovery, SE gets that information, delivers a demo with probably about half of our products. They will engage a customer in, we call it a evaluation jumpstart. So most of our products are relatively straightforward. So we give them like an hour to front end their trial, their evaluation, and then they are off on their own. And occasionally we'll do, multi-hour evaluation assistance, but for the most part, that's it. Most times sales are closed with 2, if not sometimes 1 hour of SE engagement.
Awesome. And Melissa, how are you, and what's your role and your team's focus?
Sure. So I am doing great. Thank you. So my team, very similar to what's been covered here. I want to +1 an exclamation point. Leon's comment on demos do not take less than 24 hours to prep. There is a lot of work that goes behind the scenes. Something unique about the in-moment team, we are growing. So we don't have a one-to-one alignment. We're regionally aligned right now, growing, evolving, but it really affords our SCs a lot of opportunity to work across different verticals with different reps. But the key to our SC methodology, it's embroidered on my SC jacket here. Preparation, integrity, and empathy are our core values as a team. So as we're approaching the selling process, as we're working with either the discovery and joining our sales directors early on in the process, or maybe we're joining a little bit later, we really try to root all of our efforts around those 3 core values. So that way we show up most prepared. And I think empathy is the biggest one, especially in the last year, realizing that human element of all of us as our clients, the buyers, as the team supporting, really just bringing our authentic selves to the demo is something unique about InMoment.
I love that. Thank you, Melissa, because I'm a touchy-feely type of person, so I love that stuff. Just real quick, Leon, we had a couple questions around the one-to-one ratio. So, just because there were like 8 of them that just exploded here real quick. Just to confirm, you have a 1 SE to 1 sales rep ratio, or do you
It's
have
sales team. I would
sales
love a 1-to-1 sales rep ratio. If I can get passage for about 6 or 7x the headcount, I would definitely hire it out, but I don't think it makes smart business sense. So it's 1 team to 1 AE. And I know that the topic of today is more around demos, but would love to talk more about that model. I think it's something I'm passionate about, having 1 aligned SE to 1 sales team in particular. Obviously, that's what we shoot for, and people go on vacation and take PTO and there's headcount and things like that. But I think that's a big part of success in building a relationship with your sales team and getting to know each other over the course of time. So maybe we'll put a pin in that for another day, but definitely 1 SE to 1 sales team, much as I'd like it otherwise.
Absolutely. Well, maybe we can dive into these questions and dig a little deeper, because it's all obviously correlated in the Q&A section. Actually, Leon, why don't you maybe speak to a little bit about the roles that other team members play during the demo, right? So like maybe particularly on your team, like what does that particularly look like, and then maybe before the demo as well.
Yeah, great call. And I know we talked a little bit about the Q branch team. We also have a lot of specialists that we pull in for particular products. And so rather than kind of go into that, which we already talked about, we definitely lean on those experts occasionally to demo, as well as to help build out demos and solve problems and solution. I think that the heart of your question is kind of what happens during the demo as well as the prep for it. We definitely have a lot of people internally that help prep. I think during the demonstration, as tough as it can be for an SE to focus on the demo and also keep a sort of side chat going, I do think that level of collaboration, especially on discoveries, and if you can pull it off on demos as well, makes for a really, really successful demo. So a lot of times we'll be relying on our salespeople to hop in with ties to value. Obviously, every SE knows, like, you want to tie to value as much as possible, but it's really, really nice if you have another voice in the room and another person hopping in with the direct ties to like quantifiable business value and sort of driving home what will eventually be a business justification for the purchase, so that you as an SE can focus on the tech and getting the technical win and being that trusted advisor for the client. So there's definitely a lot of roles, especially in our bigger strategic deals, to dive into, Q branch among them. But I think that's really the key relationship and the key partnership outside of the SE on any given deal, is maintaining that nice balance with your sales counterparts.
And how do you sort of gauge customer acquisition costs, right? And say, okay, well, if the deal looks like this and it's this big, or it has these variables or parameters, then we'll bring in Q branch, or we'll bring in 2 more people to help. Like, that's always difficult, right?
Yeah, good question. I think we're, with the exception of super involved engagements that require other teams to run super strategic engagements, we're pretty good about not worrying about that cost of sale. I think as a SaaS business, as I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, like, the eventual payoff for that cost of sale is over the course of many years and potentially exponential on top of it. So I think, apart from the very, very low end of the market, which it sounds like even you yourself and your cousin were able to experience a pretty high touch relationship, and then the very, very top end of the market where we're running multiple day or week kind of consultative engagements, we really don't worry too much about the cost of sale. Obviously, you want to manage your time correctly and manage it in the right places on an individual SE basis. But when it comes to pulling in extra resources, we do really focus on kind of what's best for the customer at a given time. Obviously prioritizing time accordingly, but other than that, there's no real limited resource when it comes to the dollars and cents.
Gotcha. Stephanie, what's kind of your world there around, how your team is involved in these demos and kind of what that looks like?
Sure, yeah. So we actually at Gainsight have something similar to what Leon described as the Q branch. So we have a sales engineering team in India that can help with customizing individual demo orgs when we need it. There is a bit of an evaluation that we do, and there's nothing formalized in place, but it's usually, you know, how much time do I have? Can I do this myself, or do I need to kind of shop it out to someone else to take care of so that I can focus on something else that's on my plate? We also have a value consulting team at Gainsight that helps us run like ROI analysis, so that if we do have customers who need to understand, you know, what is the ROI for this tool and what would that look like, that value consulting team helps us to provide that readout and make that presentation.
Gotcha. Melissa, you know, from your perspective, what's the biggest product demo mistake that you see in the field? And I think, you know, I just think about my recent, well, this was like a couple months ago where I was carrying a bag and I totally botched this demo. And it was primarily because I didn't align with with the colleague, the other stakeholder that was in the meeting, because we were, you know, our excuse was that we were too busy. But that alignment is super important.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing there is preparation, and that's one of our core values. For your experience, for what comes to mind for demo crimes, and what I jotted down, kind of thinking ahead, was not engaging the audience enough, right? So a lot of times we show up and we just start talking, and as much as I love to talk, I really cringe when I'm at a demo and we're not engaging the rep. And, you know, I'm not saying, hey, Frank, is this resonating? How do you see yourself leveraging this tool? Or Stephanie, do you think your team would find value in this? You know, especially being in a remote world now with Zoom, sometimes people are not on camera and you can't see, are they on their phone? Are they getting, you know, disengaged? And so for us, one thing that we really try to do is engage the team, make it a very collaborative conversation versus I'm just going to stand here and tell you everything and room for Q&A at the end. But there's an art too of like crafting the right open-ended questions, because you can do a lot of like yes, no questions, but then that's it, right? We want to get our customers talking because that's how you're discovering even more. So that's the biggest demo crime and that I don't know, tracking, I guess.
Awesome. Well, Frank, you've been doing this for a long time. I was 8 years old, learning how to maybe ride a bike. Actually, I was probably running into a mailbox. I remember that day with my training wheels. Anyways, what's your take? What have you seen over your years? And then how do you know, you know, to Melissa's point, like, how do you know, hey, these are the right number of open-ended questions?
I'll piggyback off of what Melissa said. I think in the world of Zoom, which we live in it almost 100% of the time, you know, we have low average sales price products. So everything is transacted over the phone. So it is ultra critical to ensure that we are staying engaged. And I don't think, you know, other than distracting the customer from the demo and from your own flow, I think there's no limit to how many questions you should ask. I think what's important is something that I learned in Sandler selling, which is a technique called reversing, where if a customer asks you a question, you do three things. You acknowledge the question. So thank you for that question. I get that a lot. Oh, that's an interesting question. Rephrase the question to make sure that the customer asked you what they really wanted to ask you. And then instead of answering the question, ask another question. Hey, why is that important to you? Is it a question that was laid by the competitor? You know, so why is that important to you? How does that help you? You know, and if they answer the question, continue to drill down and almost like peel back the onion and try to get deeper and deeper. And that's how you keep them engaged. And I always used to say I'd bore myself with some of my demos. So I needed the customers to keep me engaged myself. So I need to ask a lot of questions.
Awesome. Thank you for that. You know, Stephanie, I have been an SDR. I started my career in SaaS as an SDR, and I remember I would always made the mistake of showing the entire kitchen sink, right? What would you say from, I'd have this 45 minutes, I promise. And then it's, 44 minutes of the demo. And at the end, I'm like, oh, so, what do you think? What do and obviously I lost them about 30 minutes before. From your perspective, what would you say are the biggest no-nos or mistakes that you've seen in the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Harbor Cruise demo, everyone's kind of alluded to it. I think that's a very common pain point for our audiences. You don't want to show up to a demo and just show everything. That just, I think, reveals that you don't know enough about them. So you're just trying to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. So really understanding going in, do you have strong discovery? Do you understand what the customer is looking to do? And target things specifically to that. Sometimes I'll even start with what I know are the most important things and do those things first and just gauge the audience reaction. Even ask them just up front, like, how does this resonate with you? How do you see this impacting your day-to-day if you were to switch to this instead of what you're doing today?
And how many clicks? I love the Harbor Tour. We talk a lot about the Harbor Tour, and there are a couple authors out there, which I'm blanking out on right now. Mr. Cohen, that wrote that book. Okay. Anyways, he's going to kill me if he sees this. In any case, how do you know how long that Harbor Tour should be?
That's a good question. Well, I think that that's a really good question. I think if you think about only having half of that allotted time to actually show them anything, because you might have the CEO on the call and they have to leave after the first 15 minutes, or you're going to lose people's attention after the first 10. So think about what are the most important things to get in those really short windows right at the beginning when everyone is really excited and engaged. Get that stuff done first. And then from there, it kind of flows organically where they'll start asking questions. If you're doing what you need to do, they should be engaged and asking questions, and it'll just kind of come naturally on its own.
And if I may, Jorge, a couple of points there. So number one, always leave the rep like 10 minutes till the end of the demo. I don't know if anyone mentioned that. I apologize if they did. We need to talk about next steps, but the rep or the SE, because I think demos should be done collaboratively, need to ask the question, 2 questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well did we do? If they say a 10, hey, great. So did we meet all the requirements? Yeah. If they say a 5, ooh, what did we miss? What didn't maybe we show you? To Stephanie's point, you want to hit all the items, you want to touch upon maybe the things that are important to you that maybe differentiate you from other products, but also to make sure that you've covered everything that they wanted to see. So asking that question, hey, is there anything that I missed that I could show you either now with the last few minutes or maybe schedule a second time?
I love that, Frank. It's like when I interview, I always ask at the end, so based on our conversation today, do I sound like I'm, a good candidate for the
right?
For the
Exactly. Close.
And then, yeah, the closing question, right? Awesome. Leon, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest mistakes or hiccups that you've seen in the field? And I know that a lot of people just go into, as Melissa, alluded to, we just sort of go in without any framework a lot of the time. And so, of course, that could certainly hurt you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the Harbor Cruise has a time and a place. And I think it's certainly something we utilize in certain situations. I think what worries me about it is when you've got maybe a couple of Harbor Cruises and you craft a demo that's sort of a Frankenstein of 3 or 4 different demos that or different product demos. And as much as our job could be boiled down to Frankensteining various tools in our toolbox to create something bespoke for a client. I think what I try to do, and anyone on my team is definitely going to laugh when I say this out loud if they're watching, is I really encourage my SEs to write a script to their discovery and then demo to that script and build their demo out to that script. And I think what that helps is, I think to Stephanie's point, I think it was you want to make sure you're really listening to the client, what they have to say. So when you write a script based on a discovery, without thinking to the extent that you can about the product or what you're going to show or what the demo is going to look like, just write the story of their life or their work and do so, and their future, right, beautiful future on your product, kind of what their life is going to be like in an ideal world. Not only are you making what they said on the disco front and center, it's also easier to do right after a disco. So it's kind of nice to get that down without having to think about crafting a demo while it's all still fresh. And then when you come back to build that demo, you're not building extraneous stuff. You're not showing anything extraneous. You're building a demo specifically to that script. It cuts down on your demo time and also makes sure it's super focused. So that's definitely a phrase of script to your disco and demo to your script that I've probably said ad nauseum to every single one of my SEs, but I do think it is super important and just like a nice way to think about that to avoid some of those pitfalls.
And I'm sorry, and I hate to keep adding my 2 cents in here, but I
You're the
agree
OG,
with you.
Frank. You get your time
Oh,
here.
thank you. I agree with you, Leon. However, depending on the level of requirements, there might be 15 different CRMs, in your case, Leon, that will meet 100% of the requirements. So one thing that I was taught a long, long time ago is, number one, make sure you explain and sell them what they need and not only what they are asking for, but what they need. Okay, and number two, I think I kind of alluded to this before. Make sure you're differentiating yourself from your competitor. I could, if I'm a small business and I need some basic contact management, am I going to buy Salesforce or buy, I don't know, whatever the low end product is these days? You want to sell them Salesforce if they're, 10 users, right? Or whatever it is. So you really need to make sure, hey, this is what you're going to grow into. Why not just make the leap now as opposed to buying something for today's needs and then having to migrate over to Salesforce 5 years from now? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
great point. I think all the more reason to tie to that what you're hearing from them and paint that vision based off what you're hearing instead of what you think it might be. But yeah, point definitely taken, Frank.
And Leon, to my point earlier, the 80% of the market, we don't even know what they're called. So, but quick question, Leon, how like what's the ratio between disco and discovery and demo? When you're writing out that script.
Yeah, in terms of like time spent on
Exactly.
discovery, it should always be at least 1-to-1, I think, but like there should be at least as much disco as there is demos. And we are talking a little bit about an ideal world. We all run into those use cases where it's like, they want it yesterday. We need to run super fast. It's the end of the quarter. Like there are definitely situations. I don't think we'd ever do like a disco/demo. There are certainly other ways to solution in those use cases. But if you're running a traditional cycle or anything remotely strategic, I think you're shooting for at minimum, if it's going to be an hour demo, an hour of discovery. And it depends, applies to all of this. But if anything, if you're really trying to drive it home and it's a relatively decent sized deal, you may want your traditional discovery and then get input from sort of the end users, boots in the ground kind of feel and what their day-to-day is like, and then maybe a touch point with power if they're not on that original discovery. So end up having maybe 2 or 3 per call just to make sure everyone's aligned. And part of our job is, to bring different parts of a business together and rowing in the same direction. So at least minimum 1-to-1, probably shooting for 2 or 3 times as much discovery at the end of the day.
Awesome. Now, Melissa, when you think about sort of extracting those specific features that your audience or buyers are going to need to achieve whatever it is, the outcome that they're looking to achieve, how do you actually go about that, discovering that those features and rolling out that process?
Yeah. So ideally, this is where it's a team effort, right? So when you're in the discovery process, I try to have not only the sales director, but maybe if a practitioner is going to be a part of this presentation. And practitioner for us, we have folks that lived and breathed in the customer feedback role that have now come over and consult for us. And so can really align to, I've been in your shoes, this is how I've done it, or how I've grown my business in the past. I love involving them early So we can collaborate coming out of that discovery, like Leon was saying, to be able to then script and really start to paint that picture. The other piece that I try to do is, if I'm questioning, am I hitting the nail on the head? Am I really demoing to those right features, especially trying to be pithy and succinct and really nailing it? I will try to build a champion within our prospect and see if they'll dry run with us. I've had the privilege of being able to do that with a couple of demos. Not always everybody's receptive to that, and could be RFP process and all of that. But if you can build a champion and validate with them, here's when at least the outline, here's what I'm trying to plan, what I'm going to be delivering. Is this, on par with your expectations? I mean, that's just going to help you build that relationship, that trusted advisor, but it's also going to help you win the demo too. So those are kind of some things we think about.
Stephanie, how about your experience with that? Like really being able to extract those specific features?
Yeah, I love Melissa's point about building that champion. We do that as well. Sometimes we'll do a split where the AE will kind of deal with all the salesy stuff, but then the SC will run that conversation with the champion and really make sure, are we hitting all of that? Act as that trusted IT advisor. I've had prospects actually do reverse demos for me where they'll show me what is the thing that we're trying to replace. And then that allows me to turn it around and customize a demo to speak to those very specific workflows. That's been really successful as well.
And Frank, what's been your experience?
I mean, very much the same. Here again, the sales process is relatively simple, so we don't need to take advantage of some of the things that Stephanie and Melissa have said. Building a champion. Sometimes the technician on the call or in the evaluation becomes our champion, and we got to get him to buy in on the business and the technical value. But for the most part, similar to what Melissa and Stephanie said. But I just want to throw out one thing. I've always had these couple of sayings. When I first started, one of the junior, maybe a couple of jobs after I started, one of the junior SEs said, "Hey, what makes you successful?" And it's like, it's not me. It's the rep who puts me in a position to be successful. So I used to tell him everything that happens before the demo is more important than the demo itself. And I think we've been harping on the concept of discovery. I mean, if you don't nail the discovery beforehand, no matter what you do in the demo, unless you're lucky, could end up being a miss. So if there's anything any of us need to walk away from here, is make sure you have a thorough discovery before you start that demo. That is the key to success.
We talk a lot about hacking things in the technology world, particularly startups, growth hacking, sales hacking, whatever, right? Leon, from your perspective, any sort of like non-traditional approaches that you've seen your reps or maybe you've used yourself that have been surprisingly effective?
Yeah, great question. Probably have a few examples of like silly costumes that people have worn and things like that. Definitely anything to break the ice in that regard, I think helps a lot. And I try to push my team, I think, especially when you hire externally, pushing them to think of things that are outside the box. I mean, being strategic with what resources you give them and which resources you make them create on their own. I tell every one of my new hires that within your first 6 months going live, I want to see something I haven't seen before when it comes to demo strategy or delivering a demo or some sort of even a structure of an opportunity and how we go about uncovering some of that discovery and those sorts of things. I know you're probably looking for a more specific answer. I've seen a couple of SEs here at Salesforce experiment with OBS, which is sort of that, I think it's something broadcasting system. If you see like Twitch streamers and their faces always sort of in the corner and that kind of thing. I've seen a few SEs pop up where like during the demo, their face is on there and some really creative stuff you can do with your screen. So if I was a betting man, I'd probably put some money on that being the next like wow factor demo thing I see in terms of pushing the envelope.
Yeah, I thought the costume was a good answer right there. So thank you for that. Melissa, how about yourself?
Oh gosh. Well, you got me distracted on the costume piece. It reminds me to my training when I was at Oracle. We did it was a 9-week wave training coming into the SC program, and we talked about how to differentiate and showing up. Like my team built a demo around the theme of the board game life, and so that like resonates. I actually still have a picture of that, and I think Ashley Bunting, you're on the call. You remember that demo. I love the personalized element. And I think for us, like I mentioned, empathy is really one of our core values. And so how do you show up in that human element? And so things that have been successful for us as a team is doing some of that research as from the human perspective, right? And so we're a customer feedback management company. We went shopping and, purchased one of the retailers I demoed to, we purchased product from them, and we all had it delivered or went in store and had different experiences. So we could really speak to what that experience felt like. We also wore branded clothing for them, to really step into that team environment. And so we're somehow layering that human element, embracing that empathy for the humans in the room and the brand. I think that's been really powerful lately.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Stephanie, how about you? I know you mentioned you have particular teams that really enhance the experience.
Yeah, I love this question, and I am probably going to provide a bit of a controversial response. I know that SCs, when I got first, into this line of work, tell, show, tell over and over. That was what was kind of hammered into my brain. And, following the demo to win methodology of having the slide up to do the tell part, and then you go into the solution, and then you show, and then you wrap it up with another slide. I don't really use slides anymore. I find that it's a lot more effective just to jump right into the demo. I still do the tell piece, but I do it verbally and just ground the demo in the value. What are we going to be looking at? What is the value that we're driving for you? And go right into the demo with that. And I find that it's a lot more efficient because a lot of times audiences don't really want to sit through your slides anyway. No offense to anybody that's still using slides, but I find that most of the time they're just kind of like, wrap it up, let's get to the demo anyway. So that's my first thought. And then the other one was, I feel like a lot of SCs, they kind of take pride in controlling where they're going with the story and with the plan that they have and the script that they've prepared. But I find that it's really valuable as well to sometimes just let yourself be pulled by the audience and the prospect. Let them guide you as to what they really want to see. I know that that's sometimes seen as like a form of weakness or just not being prepared, letting them kind of take control, but I find that really valuable.
I don't think it's a form of weakness at all. I mean, I think it's like being flexible, right? Sometimes you might feel that the prospect wants you to guide them and you can pick up on that. And then sometimes it's, they want to run it. And so it's that rigidity, I think. Is that a word? Rigidity, right? Yeah. That rigidity that creates a little tension, right? Like, I think we've all been there where we're like, I don't need the 45-minute demo. I don't need you to go through this. I just need this answer, So I think that's what pops up in my mind when you mention that. Well, we have about 11 minutes left, and we want to make sure that we don't go over and respect everyone's schedule. So, I think that we'll spend, maybe one or two sort of minutes kind of touching upon some last sort of best practices that anyone wants to share. And then we'll dig into a couple questions. It doesn't look like we'll get to all the questions because we got about 21 that were submitted, but we will definitely address those, like I mentioned, through blog posts or conversations in the Pre-Sales Collective Slack. So who wants to kick us off? Frank, any sort of like last I just volunteered you, Frank, I apologize. Any last demo best or worst practices that you want to point out to folks to maybe either do or avoid? And Frank, you're on mute, by the way.
I am. So I think what we've been saying is, know your customer and the requirements. One thing we maybe didn't touch upon is know who you're selling to. So if if most of the audience is like C-level and business people, you want to be talking business value during the demo. If it's, technologists and, those types of people, maybe it's more on the technical side, technical value, or, a combination thereof. One of the questions you didn't ask is, maybe I think it had to do with not, what is the one memorable demo? So if I can, my first demo, after I did the demo, someone walked up to me and said, you know what, it was a pretty good demo, but you focused too much on the what and the how and not on the why. And that kind of ties back to what I just said. Why is this function important? Not clicking through 18 buttons, but why does it have technical and business value to that CEO or that CIO or that engineer?
Awesome. Thank you, Frank, for that. Melissa, quick question. How do you sort of differentiate the demo that you would do to an existing client versus a new client?
Yeah, so you're speaking to my blended background here. And so I really love this perspective and approach, because having been on both sides now, right? The pre-sales side, you can really get lost in painting the art of the possible. And it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of strategy involved there. But then when you are thinking of like the actual success side and how our customers are using our tool or our platform, there's little nuances and differences that don't come to light always. And so I think when I'm demoing to an existing customer, this is where you lean on your coach and your champion, right? You have that relationship. Really, naturally, this is the easier sell, or should be, because you're already a partner, right? We've established a relationship. We have success we're tracking to together. This is where you get to have fun and dig into, where are we going next? How are we growing? How are we evolving? I love leaning into the strategy of getting them to think about changing their process maybe a little bit, or uplifting or elevating is what I wanted to say, how they might be thinking about their approach versus a net new client. You have to go in and really think about, this is the first time they're meeting InMoment or your company. And, how do we articulate what we do well, but also how do we build that trust and relationship fast? And so there's a lot of work that has to happen on a net new account to establish yourself, and then get into the why, the so what, like Frank, you were saying. Both of them, either approach though, is really, it comes down to preparation. And so it's either learning about that new customer, and we do a rule of three. We have at least three preps as a team going into any demo, regardless new customer or existing, but making sure you're really invested in understanding everything about that customer that you can, and tying to how we align. But I can go on for hours on that piece. So if anyone has questions on that, hit me up. Let's chat.
Awesome. Leon, you run an organization within Salesforce that has certainly a lot of different stakeholders you need to collaborate with. What are some best practices, real quick, that sort of come to you around improving that collaboration, especially for mid-market enterprise, where there are definitely several groups that you have to interface with?
Yeah, great question. I think maintaining relationships outside of a particular deal are important. So as much as we don't need extra meetings, if you have particular stakeholders, developing a relationship outside of a specific deal cycle can help, create a bond that cuts down on maybe misinterpretations or not really knowing each other super well. So depending on how key that stakeholder is internally, I always suggest that people develop relationships with particular specialists that they're going to work with a lot. Maybe outside of just in a deal cycle, because those can be rife with differing POVs and some strife there. I've also been receiving a lot of questions about QBranch, so rather than answer them all here, Todd Jansen runs QBranch, so shameless plug. He was on DemoFest and has been on a couple of PSC content. If you have more questions, check him out. He's an amazing guy and a really, really insightful person.
Awesome. Frank, there's a question I was interested in getting your take on, and it's, what's the nicest way to say that we need someone that matters on the wrap-up call because your evaluation contact / tech champion isn't signing the check, right? That's a funny one there.
let the rep handle that one. I don't know, you put me on the spot. I can't think of a good answer off the top of my head.
No worries, no worries.
I really, honestly, I think the rep should probably be the person to say that.
One thing we coach our reps to do is utilize your SEs as one of those bargaining chips. So if you find your AEs bringing you on a lot of calls super early, enable them and educate them to say like, hey, I'll bring on my engineer if you bring on XYZ, the same way that, you know, delivering pricing or something like that can be used as a negotiation chip. That can be a nice way to not only make sure we're having the right conversations, but you're getting to power more easily as well.
Awesome, folks.
Yeah.
Well,
Sandler has, I'm sorry to answer the question. Sandler has a technique called upfront contract. So you establish like the rules of engagement. And one of them should be that the sales rep says, hey, at the wrap up, we expect the engineer who did the evaluation and the buyers to be on the phone when we discuss what we accomplished, the value we provided, the alignment to your requirements, et cetera.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Frank. Quick reminder, we have a poll that should surface on your screen right now. We have about 4 minutes left. And so we'll go to the end of, or top of the hour, the end of this session, but just as a heads up. And again, go ahead and sign up to the Pre-Sales Collective if you're interested in continuing the conversation. It's a great place for that. I'm sure everyone's familiar. I did have a question around that I see here around demo, a live demo or a stage demo. Which would you consider a best practice?
Can we respond with an it depends?
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
My thoughts exactly.
Yeah,
we're doing a lot of experimenting with some really cool tools, which you may be familiar with as well, George, in terms of how to provide some of that solutioning early in opportunities or for smaller opportunities where maybe you can't bring on the whole team. So those types of situations, things like consensus and tools like that are definitely something we keep top of mind because it does depend.
Yeah. One thing that I've seen, so I actually went through I think it was a consensus demo on Salesforce's website. And one thing that I've observed is that at the very top of the funnel, maybe, you can, it's easier to get away with a staged or, product tour or demo. As you go further down the funnel, then you're going to want more personalized experiences is sort of what comes to mind and what I've observed as well. So folks, we got about 2 minutes left. So thank you so much to everyone, all the audience members who have come here today to learn from the greatest and the best in the category. Hopefully this was super valuable. We do have the URLs to all the panelists here today in the live chat. And so take a look at that. And I'm sure there'll be some follow-ups. We'll, of course, take the conversation over to the Pre-Sales Collective here in a little bit. Just a couple like housekeeping things. And just again, shout out to James and Yuji. I have guy crushes on both of them because they're fantastic. So I just got to say that James, little elbow. So yeah, Pre-Sales Collective is crushing it. Almost 6,000 counting members, and I hear it all the time. So definitely check it out there. And I think they're going to be, maybe some information either posted in the Slack channel about upcoming webinars or events. And if not, definitely reach out and we'll send you some information. And folks, thank you again for taking the time to chat today. Again, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us or to the Pre-Sales Collective folks directly, and have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.